One, one. Yeah, yeah. Check, check. Yeah, yeah. One, two. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to ask our candidates to get settled at the front. And there's people still checking in downstairs. So we're going to give it a couple minutes before we begin.
Good evening, everyone. How are you this evening?
Good evening. Good evening.
My name is the Reverend Bobby Lewis. I am the Chief of Staff here at the Rainbow Push Coalition. We are honored that you are here today, and welcome to tonight's panel discussion, candidate forum. Before we begin, I want to thank Julia and the entire Citizen Action Illinois team for putting tonight together. I want to thank Betty Magnus for connecting everyone. She is the connector. And then I want to thank all the partners, all 30 advocacy, civic, educational, and community organizations that helped to put this together. Most importantly, I want to thank you, each of you who are here tonight joining us online. Democracy is not a spectator sport. Showing up matters, asking questions matters, and staying engaged matters. So let's lean in tonight. Let's listen closely. And this is an opportunity for us to learn more about these candidates. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for this evening, Ms. Anusha Thatakura. Anusha is a thoughtful civic leader and skilled facilitator and brings depth and clarity to these conversations. Ladies and gentlemen, let's lean in and Ms. Anusha Thatakura.
Thank you, Pastor Bobby, for the introduction, and thank you so much to Rainbow Push for hosting us this evening. Good evening. My name is Anusha Thatakura. I'm the Executive Director of Citizen Action Illinois, the state's largest and oldest public interest coalition. We are so proud to be hosting today's forum along with over 25 other co-hosting organizations for candidates running in the 2026 Democratic primary for Illinois Comptroller. Our organization just turned 50 years old. Since our beginning, we have fought to advance policies that improve the lives of working families, from making healthcare affordable, protecting consumers, to expanding access to high-quality public education. You can learn more about our work by scanning the QR code on the screens. We believe that all voters deserve to know where their candidates stand on today's most pressing challenges so that they can make educated decisions about who they want to represent them. We are very grateful to our candidates for taking the time to be here today and speaking directly to voters. All candidates participating in today's forum have filed as Democratic candidates with the Illinois State Board of Elections. Here are the ground rules for today's forum. Each candidate will be given 90 seconds for opening and closing remarks. Today's questions were developed in partnership with our co-hosting organizations. Each question will be asked of all candidates with a staggered starting order, and the seating arrangement was determined by random draw. For each question, candidates will have 90 seconds to answer. Please do not feel like you need to use all 90 seconds of your time. And the lovely team from the League of Women Voters of Chicago will be doing the timing for this forum. Can we have a round of applause for the League of Women Voters? At 30 seconds left, they will hold up a 30 seconds paddle. At 15 seconds left, they will hold up a 15 seconds paddle. When your time is up, they will hold up a stop paddle. At time, you will be allowed to finish your sentence, then they will start ringing the bell. Oh no. Well, when you see the bell, that's how you know it is time, and I will cut you off to make sure that we could be fair and get through our questions, so we will be strict with timing. Candidates will not be allowed to rebut outside of their allotted time to answer questions. With that, we will begin with 90-second opening remarks for each candidate, beginning with Margaret Croak.
All right, thank you. First, I want to thank Rainbow Push for hosting, and I want to take a moment to say that we should all keep Reverend Jesse Jackson in our prayers for a moment. But my name is Margaret Croak. I am currently a state representative of the north side of the city. I've spent the majority of my career in public service, and before being elected, I was the Deputy Chief of Staff over at the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. As a state rep for the past 5 years, I've focused my legislative portfolio on economic development while also making sure we continue to make investments in healthcare, education, and our social service safety net. I actually have a 100% voting record from Citizen Action for 2025. And I chair the House Financial Institutions Committee, so I've become the foremost authority in depositories, payment processing, and financial technology. I love the state of Illinois. I'm raising 3 kids in the state of Illinois. They are 5, 3, and 2. And as a legislator, I fight every day to give them, as well as every child, the opportunities that I believe they deserve. I believe that the Comptroller plays a key role in that fight, and that we can't leave our kids a state that they are worthy of without making sure that we are paying attention to our balance sheet. As Comptroller, I will modernize outdated systems, make sure we are maximizing taxpayer dollars, make sure we are adding transparency to how we are spending dollars, and enforce and strengthen our prevailing wage laws. I am so thankful to be here, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Our next candidate, Holly Kim.
Thank you so much to all the organizations who put this together and for Rainbow Push for hosting us tonight. My name is Holly Kim, and I have the honor of serving 2 terms as Lake County Treasurer, which means I'm the only one up here who's already doing the job of Comptroller. I grew up on the north side at Central Park in Montrose, and I attended Chicago Public Schools. Parents had a business on Lawrence in Koreatown, and it was a copier and typewriter repair store where my dad was a technician and my mom did the invoicing. His hands were always black from toner, but those hands paid the bills and put food on the table. I attended Northeastern Illinois University, and I had a kid unexpectedly, so I had to sign up for WIC, Medicaid, the Head Start program, and immediately work full-time while going to school part-time and juggling a kid. But after 8.5 years, I crawled across that finish line and got my degree. I think that really gave me a lens as an elected official to change government to do what's best for the people. And as a county treasurer, my office has been the intersection of math and social justice. In addition to raising record 200% output in investments and giving back over $6.4 million to my schools, parks, and libraries, and it's really unusual for government to give money back, but I'm a different kind of elected official. I also started 2 rapid response teams, held Know Your Rights classes, and 100 financial literacy seminars to break cycles of poverty and build generational wealth. My name's Holly Kim. I'm running for Illinois Comptroller, and I'm looking forward to answering your questions today.
Thank you. Our next candidate, Karina Villa.
Thank you so much, and thank you to Citizens Action and League of Women Voters, and to Rainbow Push for allowing us to be in this beautiful historic building for this. I am the proud daughter of Mexican immigrants. I have worked hard throughout my time in the General Assembly after having flipped not 1, but 2 Republican districts to stand with the people and the needs that are impacting folks day in and day out. When I think about a budget, I don't just see numbers on a page. I see the budget as a moral document. When I was a school social worker, I saw the struggles of everyday people. What I'm going to do when I become the next Illinois State Comptroller is not just pay the bills in the order of the people who need it the most, but bring attention to the fact that these budgets are being balanced on the backs of everyday people. We can't celebrate passing balanced budgets when we are cutting services for everyday people. Seniors aren't able to afford living in their homes. Schools are not fully funded. People with disabilities are struggling to make ends meet. There is revenue to be had. That revenue is from corporations and billionaires. As Comptroller, I will highlight these issues every single day so we can definitely make the state of Illinois the state for working people. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final candidate, Stephanie Kifowit.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you to Citizen Action. And I want to echo my colleague in really keeping in our prayers the Reverend Jesse Jackson. I've been blessed with 54 years of age, so not only have I followed him throughout my years, I've heard my parents talk about him and all the civil rights action that he has done. He's clearly an icon that we need to make sure that we maintain and hold in our hearts. Stephanie Kifowit, I have been in government finance for 20 years, over 20 years. This is a chief financial office of the state of Illinois. So as a state representative, I served during the Quinn years, I've served during the Rauner years, and I certainly served now during the Pritzker years. So I'm the only one at this table that served multiple administrations. I was on the budget work working group when the impasse decimated our social service network. I was on the working group that got us out of the budget impasse, the budget working group, and I am currently on the budget working group. After high school, I joined the United States Marine Corps. I was a daughter of a single mom and was brought up in a blended family. I put myself through college at Northern Illinois University. I'm the only one at this table that has a master's degree in public administration with emphasis on government finance. So I have been 12 years in the General Assembly focusing on veterans, seniors, and taking care of our most vulnerable, and I've been on the key budget committees that have done that. So thank you very much, Stephanie Kifowitz, State Representative.
Thank you. Our first question. Most Illinoisans have traditionally viewed the Comptroller as an elected official who ensures that the state's bills are paid. What is your vision for the office, and how would it advance economic justice for Illinoisans? Beginning with candidate Croak.
Hello? There we go. Excuse me. So I do look at the Comptroller's office. One of the things that I think is very important is that the office needs to work. It is a government office. I started at Cook County, and when I would answer the phone and someone was upset and you were able to solve their problem, that was incredibly important. You need government to be able to work for everyone. And with the Comptroller's office, I think of one specific program when you mentioned the question, and that's the vendor payment program. And if we are ever in a situation again where we have financial strain on the finances of the state, the vendor payment program allows the Comptroller to prioritize bills and work with financial institutions to make sure that small businesses, small nonprofits, medium, small profits, they are able to get payment first. And when you work with a financial institution, that financial institution pays those nonprofits, are able to float those bills, and then the Comptroller owes the financial institution. I feel much better about the Comptroller owing a financial institution versus a nonprofit that is providing critical services for their communities. Many of those small nonprofits or medium-sized nonprofits are perform outsized importance for their communities. So I guess to that question, I think about it from truly like an implementation standpoint. What can the office do realistically to make sure that we are keeping the lights on for those services that are so critical?
Thank you. Candidate Kim.
So I would see this office as a way to help underprivileged and economic justice in that back when I first got out of college, I worked as an office manager at a pediatrician that took the All Kids program. And I firsthand got to see that when we bill and they don't pay timely, how that affects our cash flow and paying our own staff. What ended up happening is, we were okay because we floated it, but there were other offices that refused to take the All Kids program after that, which meant less service providers, less dentists for people who need them. And so it's seared into my brain how important it is to make sure that we have timely reimbursements. So that's one thing. The second thing, which I'm already doing, is I believe there's a lot of economic justice in lifting people out of cycles of poverty and teaching them how to build wealth, how to use money responsibly. That's the financial literacy seminars. As current county treasurer, I've held classes about free grants for home ownership in historically redlined areas for our Black and brown communities. I think leading with intentionality brings people across that line. And I frequently start our financial literacy seminars saying, when we were younger, we were told it's rude to talk about money. I go, but you know who talks about money all the time? Rich people in front of their kids. And so we're going to talk about money and we're going to be intentional. And so I place that in highest regard. Education lifts people out of situations.
Thank you. Candidate Villa.
Under this Trump regime, we need leaders in every single seat who are going to stand up boldly and talk about the real issues that matter. I have flipped 2 districts and talked to thousands of people. On this campaign trail, I have been across the state listening to everyday issues that people are facing. As a state senator, I have seen us balance the budget on the backs of the working class. What we need is to hold billionaires accountable, because I agree with Holly as she is talking about some of the great services that she wants to bring to the state of Illinois. But without additional revenue, forget about it. Without additional revenue and investments in places like the West Side, have you all driven through the West Side? Have we seen the austerity in some of these communities? Without bringing more resources to our communities, we are not going to be able to accomplish what is owed to these communities. What is owed historically to these communities who have been underinvested by the state of Illinois. We need to hold the corporations and the billionaires accountable, bring more revenue, and I will be using the Office of the Comptroller to report out on these issues. I'm not going to jump up and down and say, I paid the bills on time in front of people who are looking at their bills and saying, I don't have money to feed my family. Should I pay my mortgage payment first? Or should I pay my child's treatment for health care? That's what everyday people are facing today. Those are the decisions that they're dealing with, and we need to be more responsible as a government to our taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Kifowit.
Thank you so much. The question was regards to economic development or economic justice, and one of the things that I've been working on with my good friend Will Davis is regards to the evidence-based funding formula and increasing funding for our schools. Our schools are not getting the funding they need, and the property taxes are extremely too high. Housing isn't right, and we need to make sure that we have housing. So as controller, when the grants come through for housing, we're going to hold them accountable. We're going to hold individuals accountable that get housing grants to make sure that they are actually keeping people in their homes. And that's one thing that we can do. As controller, right now, the office is about 77% white. And the controllers come in front of my committee every single year for 12 years. And it's the same stale rhetoric. What I'm going to do is create partnerships with organizations such as yours and the Urban League to make sure that we have mentorship programs so that individuals can come right into a job and identify the job skills that our youth need to come into the controller's office and have a good paying union job. That's what we need to do for economic justice. I agree that the budget is out of whack, which is why I voted against it. Everybody else, well, except for Kim, who's a county, but the other individuals voted for a budget that doesn't fund our schools, that doesn't fund what we need to do, that doesn't do the right thing, that doesn't fund our pensions. And as the chair of pensions, I've been standing up for individuals to have a retirement security. We need to have housing security. We need to have higher retirement community, and we also need to have educational opportunities that I've been fighting for and I will continue to fight for, and the role of the controller. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next question. In November 2020, voters failed to ratify an amendment to the Illinois Constitution that would have allowed the state to replace its flat income tax with a graduated tax structure. That, in turn, killed the fair tax legislation, which was designed to raise around $3.6 billion in new annual revenue by imposing higher income tax rates on the wealthiest 3% and reducing income taxes paid by the bottom 97%. Illinois is suffering from a long-term structural deficit in its general fund that cannot be eliminated without either raising taxes or significantly reducing spending on core services like education, healthcare, and human services. What tax policy changes would you support to alleviate Illinois' long-term structural deficit while providing targeted tax relief to low and moderate income families? And for this question, we will begin with candidate Kim.
Thank you so much for that question. So I agree actually with the fair tax, and I'm very disappointed that it didn't pass. I think structurally, I think we all know that raises have never kept up with cost of living. That's all across the board, all across this country, and partly the reason why buying power is so low. But as different people have gone in giving tax cuts, to whether it was big companies, corporations, to like entice them to come in somewhere, they've always gotten the good cards, right? It's not the small business owner who gets that kind of treatment. And so it is time that the oligarchs, the corporate, welfare, like that, they pay their fair share. And frequently in politics, they always have, all of us at the bottom fighting each other. Whether they want to blame like other people stealing their jobs or whether it's the immigrants, and none of this is true. It's a top to bottom problem, and they need to pay their fair share and not pit us against each other. Even different political parties, not to pit us against each other, because it's a top to bottom problem. And this is one that's been so systemic that even when I was a kid going to Chicago public schools, that there were strikes back then for not having enough funding. This has been going on for decades, and it has to be addressed, and there has to be enough stomachs voting yes on a referendum so that the top 1% earners pay their fair share.
Thank you. Candidate Villa.
Anyone want to talk about this for hours, please give me a call. I would be happy to do it. I think that we need leaders who can build coalitions. To that end, I am the co-chair of the Progressive Caucus in the Senate. This entire year, our North Star has been about this issue. We want another chance at this constitutional amendment. The fact that it has failed does not mean that we shouldn't go at it again. We are the 8th most regressive state with our taxes. I have been leading from January until May round tables with my colleagues in the House and the Senate, along with other groups, to talk about how we're going to pass this constitutional amendment and have another chance at it. Some of the things that we're missing, we did not say where the money was going to go. We just said, let us pass this constitutional amendment. And the name sucked. The name sucked. So we have an opportunity right now to have another go at the constitutional amendment, and we're going to take leadership. I'm going to keep fighting to make sure that we get this on the ballot because our communities deserve it and need it. And there's a pile of bills in my office that have been vetted of how we're going to hold these corporations and billionaires accountable. Raise your hand in the room if you have offshore accounts. Okay, so those people are the ones that we need to tax, all right? We need more revenue. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Kifowit.
Thank you so much. Because I go back a little ways, before 2020, to be quite honest. In 2014, I voted to put a non-binding referendum called the Millionaire's Tax on the ballot. And that's everybody making over $1 million would get an additional 3% tax. That passed overwhelmingly with 60%. But it was just an advisory. And what did the leadership do? They did nothing. The leadership in the House and the Senate, they did nothing. In 2019, I voted to put the fair tax on the ballot. So I supported that effort as well. And as my colleague said, it was not a well-run campaign, and it failed miserably. In 2024, just last year, we put another non-binding millionaire's tax referendum on the ballot, and that again passed with over 60% of the vote. So there is leadership there if it is, as my colleague said, recognized that the state of Illinois is made up of everyday people, and they believe that millionaires and billionaires should pay their fair share. Without a doubt, I have a proven track record going back from 2014 that supports this. What we need to do is make sure, as my colleague says, that we have transparency. And as Comptroller, not only will I champion the fact that we do need more revenue, we do have a structural deficit, but we also need to be transparent. And I will modernize the Comptroller's website so that everyday people can see exactly where the dollars are going, to see exactly how we're spending the money, so that taxpayers can have faith in their government. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Candidate Croak.
Thank you. So I actually was on the ballot when the progressive income tax was on the ballot, and I was always a big supporter of the initiative. It was something that when we were doing our candidate questionnaires, I was always a big supporter. But I'm going to push back on this idea that there was this bad campaign that was run for the progressive income tax, for the fair tax, because there were millions and millions of dollars that were invested in that campaign. I thought the governor did an incredible job trying to push that initiative, and I guarantee that if we were able to get it back on the ballot, which is something that I would support in the legislature to vote to get it back on the ballot, that same fervor would be utilized again, and then that same coalition building would be utilized again. So I think that ultimately that's going to be something for the voters to decide. And actually, to back up Representative Kifowit, I think that maybe it could be something with the verbiage or something to do with the ballot naming and how we push that and how we advertise it. Maybe it is the name on the ballot to be able to get that. But I do want to push back on that nothing was done there. I do also want to say that we have increased our budget by over $9 billion in the last 5 years. COVID changed the landscape quite significantly. So I do agree that there could be changes to how we increase revenues. I think that we should be looking at corporations, but we are not as stagnant as everyone claims the state to be. We have increased revenues over the past few years, and I think we're going to continue to have to do that as we want to make sure that our most vulnerable populations are protected.
Our next question. Budgets are moral documents. In a time where the federal government is attacking public services, including healthcare, housing, education, and policies promoting DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, what kind of reporting or auditing would you support to ensure that state spending aligns with broader racial and economic equity values and goals? Beginning with candidate Villa.
I just can't stay silent on the last point. Listen, ask Access Living if they think that we've increased the budget enough. Ask the people with disabilities if they think that we've increased the budget enough. Ask our school teachers if they think that we've increased the budget enough. The answer is no. So the next, so just to talk about this question, we need to make sure that we're investing in the communities that need it the most, the ones that have been most disinvested in. I would want to make sure that the Comptroller's office is finding ways to work with these communities in help with procurement, cutting the red tape for these business owners to get to get some of the money from the state in order to provide the services that we know that these companies are able to provide. Sometimes that requires more hand-holding. My parents are small business owners. They understand the red tape, the bureaucracy. They're working 24/7 just to make ends meet and keep the business doors open. These companies need a seat at the table. They sometimes need a little extra assistance to get there. We need all of the zip codes in the state of Illinois to have equal opportunities. I will ensure that I do everything in the Comptroller's power to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Kifowit.
Thank you so much, and thank you for this very important subject. As the only one at this table that actually was a legislator during the Rauner years, I saw firsthand the immoral actions of a vindictive governor on our nonprofits and our social service networks. We had social service networks that were hanging on by a thread, but the hand-picked controller, Leslie Munger, would not pay them, would not give them their funds that they needed. And what we're seeing today is the aftermath of several vital nonprofits and organizations in our community having to close because they just couldn't make the bills meet during the 2.5-year budget impasse. I've seen that firsthand. I know what needs to be done because we need to make sure that we fund the nonprofits, the organizations that do so much for our community, the domestic violence shelters that were going to close during the Rauner years. Chicago State almost closed during the Rauner years. They were squeezing our nonprofits, similar to what's going on the national level. So as Comptroller, I will create a nonprofit community-based liaison to work with our organizations to make sure that we are holding DCEO accountable, not to get in the weeds, but the vouchers don't come from DCEO, we can't pay them out. So we will be putting on the website all the outstanding vouchers that our nonprofits need to fund them in time to make sure they can make payroll. And in addition to that, also work with legislation so that they can get the interest back from the loans and from the lines of credit they have to take out because the state just can't pay on time. As Comptroller, I will champion that as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Candidate Croak.
So there is software that exists in other states where you can literally take an appropriation in a budget and you can follow the life cycle of those dollars. And that software actually is being built in Illinois too. So I've seen where you can pull an appropriation, see the life cycle, see those grant dollars, and you can break it down and see, okay, are those dollars going to a minority-owned business? Are those going to a certain nonprofit? And I think that's really important to the question about auditing, to be able to track those dollars for everyone in this room, for a taxpayer, for the General Assembly to be able to see, okay, when a committee, a agency goes in front in the legislature and says, well, 20% of our spend goes to minority-owned businesses, prove it to me. Show me that that is actually happening. I want to see the transparency there. And that's something that I feel like we need to do as a priority within the state, not just in the Comptroller's office. And I think is incredibly important to making sure that we are supporting small businesses and small nonprofits, kind of keeping to the goals of our state, putting our money where our mouth is, really.
Thank you. Candidate Kim.
Thank you. Back when I was a village trustee and there was friction between our black community and police across the nation. In fact, with the shootings of Philandro Castile and Alton Sterling, I held a Know Your Rights seminar so that people could know their rights in their car, in their home, and how to have a successful protest. So in my own office, I've also had the most promotions for our minority and women employees that are there. So I'm someone who is very cognizant of not only national landscape, but advocating for our communities of color. And I have not forgotten DEI, no matter what the federal government does. I do think that there are some diversity metrics that are related to grant funding. And so what's wild is I know when the Republicans stopped doing DEI, and I somewhat expected that, but what I didn't expect was how it got quiet on our side too in some places. And I think what we could definitely do to hold accountable the grant funds is we could look into some sort of control of the spigot to turn it off like we do for prevailing wage. They have to certify, if it's an Illinois taxpayer-funded project that we pay prevailing wage for unions, that they also certify if they're receiving these grant funds based on DEI grants, that we meet these metrics. And I think that's something that we could implement because it is grants that are tied to that metric.
Thank you. And just a note for candidates, you are welcome to use your 90 seconds however you wish, but candidates will not be allowed to rebut outside of their allotted time to answer questions. The Comptroller's office is responsible for making timely payments to agencies, local authorities, small businesses, and schools. The next few questions will address policies affecting public services. Public education is under attack at the federal level, with threats to shut down the U.S. Department of Education, grants and other federal funding sources having dried up, and the federal government is now touting school choice. What are your views on school choice and whether or not Illinois should opt in? Beginning with candidate Kifowit.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I think education is so important. I went to public education. My children attended East Aurora School District 131, and I went to Northern Illinois University. So I think public education is so important. And the fact of the matter is the state of Illinois does not fund the schools the way we need to. They underfund our public education. Our K through 12 funding formula only increases funding $300 million a year of a $55 billion general revenue fund. Now, I was blessed that when I was 17, I went into the military. I joined the United States Marine Corps. I was able to get my GI Bill to get through college. A lot of people don't have their GI Bill. So I am against school choice. I voted against the Invest in Kids. In fact, I was the only one here when Governor Runner put that in as a poison pill, the Invest in Kids, the faux choice there was. I voted against that. I have a record of voting against that. What did he do? He circumvented the system and say, you wealthy individuals, when you send your kids to private school, I am a public school person. When you send your kids to private school, you get 75 cents on the dollar back because these rich people need that back. And they took advantage of it, and they circumvented the monies that had to go to our public school. So I have a record. I'm the only one at this table that have voted against Invest in Kids, and I voted against it as well, so it was not renewed because I 100% are with teachers. They believe they need to have a proper pension. They need to be properly paid, and our schools need to be properly funded. It's in our state constitution, and we're just not doing it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Candidate Croak.
Representative Kiffer, with all due respect, that's not how the Invest in Kids program works. It was that you could get an additional deduction if you made a state contribution, not tuition, which is not a donation. So if I'm an individual who makes a donation to a fund, then to a scholarship fund for a school, then I can also take a state deduction for that. It's not that it's me paying my kids' tuition for school. But no, I don't agree with school choice. School choice is me being able to put my tax dollars, which should go to the public education, into a private institution, which is completely unfair. We've seen the breakdown of public education in I believe it was Kansas, where essentially it completely decimated our public education in that state, and they've had to completely try to rebuild that institution. As it pertains to Invest in Kids, that was a program that I supported so that it would allow for the kids who were in the program to continue to be in the program. But ultimately, if it's sunsetted, I understood that. But I didn't want to yank kids out of the school that they were in currently.
Thank you. Candidate Kim.
Thank you. As someone who went to Chicago Public Schools, I'm a huge advocate for public schools. I learned so much in terms of diversity, education. My husband is a member of the IFT and was a math teacher. All my kids go to public schools, and I value education so much that even while I was pregnant in college and working full-time, I staggered through 8.5 years of going to school at nighttime. God bless you, Northeastern Illinois University, just so I could get my degree because it was that important to me. The Comptroller's Office distributes not only MAP grants, but money for students who are differently abled, and that needs to continue. I will be actively involved in that, and I'm against school choice because of what public schools stand for and need to provide. Not only IEPs, but different mobility challenges and requirements, buses and transportation, free and reduced lunch. These are all reasons why public funds need to stay with public schools.
Thank you. Candidate Villa.
I am against school choice and any other ideas to erode money away from public schools. What I am for is fully funding our schools. Back to the reason why I think that the constitutional amendment failed, other than the fact that in the suburbs no one campaigned about it, only in the city. And I know that because I was actually knocking on doors to flip a district at the time. The other reason it failed is because we didn't attach it, like I said, to what it was going to go to. In my opinion, and I actually raised this when I was in caucus as a freshman in the General Assembly, we needed to attach it to fully funding our schools, which would then directly impact our property taxes. Because when you look at your property tax bill, you see where the money is going, and where's the majority of the money going? Our school districts, right? So if we were to say, let's pass this constitutional amendment and let's attach it to fully funding our schools, then you've got actual solutions. Then you've got actual tax relief for everyday people. It really isn't rocket science. It's reality. It's what we need to do to make sure that folks stay in their homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Many immigrants with disabilities face barriers to accessing health care, legal protections, and public benefits because of both immigration status and disability. What steps would you take as Comptroller to ensure that immigrants with disabilities have equitable access to health care, services, and accommodations? Beginning with candidate Croak.
I think when you talk about the Comptroller's constitutional ability to prioritize bills, one of the main industries or social services that the Comptroller has to prioritize is going to be healthcare. And that is because we are seeing an attack on healthcare on the federal level, especially in rural areas. Unfortunately, I do have this fear that we are going to see our healthcare facilities in rural areas close. So when I think of how the comptroller can directly prevent that, I do think about making sure that those bills are some of the first ones that are out the door. And whether it's clinics, whether it's hospital systems, making sure that those get paid, because that is where many of our communities, our uninsured communities, do seek care, is going to be critical during this time.
Thank you. Candidate Kim.
Thank you. As a daughter of immigrants, I am super pro-immigrant. And I have to say that, especially being a money person, nothing saves money like prevention. If we give them proactive health care, it saves us so much money later when they're going to the emergency rooms, and it costs so much by then. Or if someone has rampant diabetes that they never took care of because they weren't diagnosed, all that costs us a lot of money later. So I am totally for giving that proactive health care and stabilizing to our immigrant community, including housing. All of these insecurities end up costing us more money if we don't address it later. To quote, unusually, the Cato Institute, which is a conservative research arm, and I love throwing this one at Republicans, the U.S. economy does better with immigrants, documented or undocumented. In fact, we make billions of dollars that goes into Social Security and into our economy. Immigrants pay taxes, whether it's sales tax, property tax through rentals, or into Social Security. And so I am very much pro-immigrant in terms of it being good for the economy, and in doing so, we should take care of them.
Thank you. Candidate Villa.
All right, let's pass health care for all in this country. Listen, providing health care to immigrants was a fight that I proudly took in the General Assembly alongside my sister, then State Representative Delia Ramirez, who is now a congresswoman. We passed HBIA and HBIS. Since then, that program has been slashed and cut. The ramifications of that was that safety net hospitals struggled because they were getting reimbursed for the health care they were providing. And it was prevented, it wasn't just hospital, it was regular everyday care for people, okay? So when you cut that, what happened was these safety net hospitals were struggling. I actually in Springfield carried the legislation years ago to bring money to free and charitable clinics for the state of Illinois. I have a proven track record of investing in the immigrant communities, but not just in the immigrant communities. This last session, I held the line and said I would not vote for the budget unless the safety net hospitals received the funding that they needed. I did that with some of my colleagues in the Senate, and that is why the safety net hospitals were able to be funded.
Candidate Kifowit.
Thank you so much for that question. I think all of us are immigrants. I'm a grandchild of Polish immigrants, and I agree that immigrants are so important to our fabric of not only of our community, but our country. As a veteran, I served with many individuals from very many ethnicities, and they're all wonderful people. As an alderman with the city of Aurora, representing a 65% Hispanic district, I worked with the community, and I saw the struggles. And my daughter had good friends, and I saw their struggles as well, especially when they were undocumented. Thankfully, in our schools, we have provided education and individuals with disabilities in our schools with services. In fact, better services than when my friend went to Tennessee, realized her disabled child did not get services, came back to Illinois and said Illinois has great services for all in our schools. Unfortunately, that is not the case for adults. And I am sitting here being appalled because when we had the budget impasse, then Governor Bruce Rauner cut off dialysis for undocumented individuals. He's heartless, and he was cruel. And so I was proud when we put back in the budget that we fought to get services that we could for undocumented. Now, I voted for HBIA and HBIS, and I did vote to fund the free clinics as well because they are so important. But our safety net hospitals are failing because of the same evilness, the same mentality that's on our national government today, and I will continue to fight out against the federal government and continue to fight for the individuals here in Illinois. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next question. The Comptroller's Office plays a critical role in supporting Illinois small businesses, from certifying them for state contracts and programs to strengthening access to credit in underbanked communities. Because the office directly impacts how quickly small vendors get paid and how they navigate state financial systems, the Comptroller has a stake in whether small businesses can access fair, transparent financing. In 1968, the Truth in Lending Act required lenders to disclose the annual percentage rate, or APR, for consumer loans, but small businesses were excluded. As a result, many small businesses still lack clear information about the true cost of financing. Do you support action requiring lenders to small businesses to disclose the APR of their loans? Beginning with candidate Kim.
Sure. So a couple different thoughts here. Growing up, my dad was president of the chamber in the Koreatown, and so I am very pro small business, which is why I brought up earlier how large corporations get subsidies and enticement money, but small businesses do not. So I would definitely be in favor of the APR being displayed. I also want to mention that the Comptroller's Office currently pays their bills 13 to 14 days, which is less than 2 weeks, and it's faster than the private sector. I also want to say, so I sit on the Comptroller's commission. It's called Bank On, and it's against predatory lending. And sitting on that commission, we have gone after scams. I've also worked with them to, the state reps, and thank you to the Black Caucus, for passing the measure that lowered the APR at which payday loans could charge. And so that was an effort through the Comptroller's Office, and some of those shops actually closed up and left Illinois. And so there is an effort to do this and make things whole, and I do support small businesses. That is an excellent idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Villa.
So I have always said, since I started running for this seat, that the most vulnerable are the ones that I would put first. Small businesses in Black and brown communities are struggling. Yet they are the most innovative, beautiful businesses. Oftentimes they start in people's homes and their basements. When they finally get to open a shop, it's part of the American dream. All of the red tape and bureaucracy, the confusion about these loans is unjust. It's unjust because they don't have the dollars that these corporations have. They don't have access to the attorneys or the fancy accountants. At minimum, we can show them these percentage rates. That's at minimum what we can do. In the Comptroller's Office, I will have an open door for these small businesses. Like I said earlier, including my mom and dad.
Thank you. Candidate Kifowit.
Thank you so much. I certainly want to correct the record here because I was there voting on the Black Caucus pillars. And predatory lending had been in the Black Caucus agenda well before Comptroller Mendoza created the Bank On Commission. In fact, the Bank On Commission had their first meeting at the end of 2020. I passed and I voted for the pillar in January of 2021. So let's just be clear and not take credit for something that the Black Caucus has been talking about for years and years and years and finally got it across the finish line. I voted for all 4 Black Caucus initiatives. So I just want to make the records clear. It was not the Comptroller and it was not this commission. It was the hard work of the Black Caucus over a lot of years, and I think that deserves some of my time to set the record straight, because it's just not right to take credit for somebody else's hard work, and I need to call that out. I think in the Comptroller's Office, as was mentioned, we are paying our bills on time. When the voucher hits the Comptroller's Office, DCEO routinely has been lagging in giving our vouchers, and that's why we're going to have a complete transparent system so that small businesses know when the bill hits, when the voucher's generated, and we'll hold DCEO accountable for being more efficient. Secondly, I agree. We give too many subsidies to big businesses that have $1 billion in profits, and our economy is generated by small businesses. And as controller, I will continually to call that out because it's just not right. Hundreds of millions of dollars go into big businesses and not to our small Main Street commissions.
Thank you. Candidate Croak.
Thank you. So actually, I started in the General Assembly in the Bank of Springfield Center for when we voted on the Black Caucus pillars, and I do want to add that the Predatory Lending Act bill was so popular that we had it be a standalone bill, and it received unanimous support, and that was the work of the Black Caucus, and we capped the Predatory Lending Act at 36%, which was monumental. As it pertains to the small businesses, I mean, this goes back to the vendor payment program that I was referencing. Yes, it is easy to pay the bills when we have the funding, when we have the revenues. And right now, we have the revenues. But we are looking at a situation where the federal government wants to make the state of Illinois an example. Like Trump has it out for the state of Illinois. And my concern always is what happens if he starts to siphon off our revenues. And the vendor payment program needs reform so that we make sure that our small and medium-sized businesses are the first ones that get paid, and the Comptroller has the ability to work with financial institutions so that we can get those companies paid first. So when they have 5 days of payroll and they are running out, they get paid. That's my biggest concern. And I'm thinking ahead on those plans. And that's what I think we need to make sure we are planning for.
Thank you. Our next question. The recent federal budget reconciliation bill made slashes to SNAP, Medicaid, environmental subsidies, higher education, and much more. As a comptroller, how would you suggest that the state address these cuts, beginning with candidate Villa?
My favorite question. Like I've been saying this whole night, we need revenue. We need to tax these corporations. We need to hold, they're getting these tax breaks and tax vacations by this Trump regime, right? The corporations, we need to hold them accountable here in the state of Illinois, right? We had, as a Progressive Caucus, we had the digital ad tax that was put in to the bill before it went over to the House. And then it magically got pulled out. It got pulled out. We had done all of the research. We had changed the bill language based on some of the setbacks in some of the other states. This would have brought billions of dollars of revenue, but it got pulled out in the House. We need bold leaders that are going to be holding these billionaires accountable. I just heard earlier that it was said, we have the revenue. What are you saying to all of the people who were just cut off of health care by the state of Illinois, or the people who work in the housing services who didn't receive the dollars that they needed? We need the revenue is what we need in the state of Illinois, and it's there, but we just need to make sure to be bold enough to get that revenue, and not on the backs of the working class. No more regressive taxation. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Kifowit.
Thank you so much for that. As we know, that bill cut SNAP benefits, and one of the things that I noticed is that in November 1st, other states they waited up until 12/01 and put in for the full SNAP reimbursement, and their people got full SNAP reimbursements. The state of Illinois put in for half, and they got half a reimbursement, waiting for the bill that just passed to reimburse the SNAP benefits. That's unacceptable. We need to be on top of it. When the window opens, we need to be there 100%, and that's what I'm going to be for the controller, making sure everything is accountable. You don't go into the United States Marine Corps and come out without accountability, without making sure everything is right, everything is correct, and you know the matters to do it. We go through, we adapt and overcome. And that's what I bring to the controller's race. My experience, this is the Ronner years, just exasperated. This is what Bruce Rauner did, and I've seen it, and I can deal with it, and we have to be on the front lines at the ready to make sure that we grab the resources when they're available. SNAP benefits got pushed off until another day in this bill, but there are more threats to our citizens, and as Comptroller, I will continue to fight and continue to keep the pressure up to fund these vital services. And that's what we need to do to our congressional leaders, is to make sure that they know the damage they are doing in people's lives every single day. And I will be right there with my buddy Kwame Raoul fighting for you.
Thank you. Candidate Croak.
So one of the things that we've seen that the Comptroller's office, I think, could do a little bit better is that there are federal match dollars that we are missing out on. So there are opportunities where we could be identifying places where we are losing out. That's just dollars that we are leaving on the table. And if we had better financial modeling within the office, we could be getting those free dollars. Is that substantial enough to fill all of the holes that you outlined? No. But is free money? Yes. And should we be implementing software and systems in place to be able to get that? I believe we should be. As it pertains to some of the options that we had on the table last year, I think it's important to realize that while a digital ad tax or taxes that are I think overwhelmingly popular, like I would support a digital ad tax, they could have problems. They have problems right now in the Supreme Court, and I never want to tell someone that I have dollars for you and they don't come. I don't want to promise you something and not be able to keep that promise. I don't want to promise you revenues and not be able to give you those dollars. And that's really important to me, that you always know that I'm coming from a truly genuine place. And I'm not going to balance a budget just in words alone, that these revenues actually show up for you. And I think that's very important when we're talking about a budget.
Thank you. Candidate Kim.
Thank you. From my time back in the day when we had a Republican governor, Rauner, and a Republican controller, I used to sit on a board of a nonprofit called Hunnell, and it was a senior care organization. And we would send home care workers to people's homes to bathe them, feed them, help them around the house so they could live at home with dignity. And without money coming in for our reimbursements, it was such a difficult time. With having no budget passed for 2 years, I remember looking at the other board members going, we only have 2 months of operating budget left. Like, who's going to go to these people's homes? And we were seeing left and right that mental health facilities were closing up as well. Lots of nonprofits suffered. And so knowing what that was like, being on the other end, what I would make sure, because this is a question about cash flow, is that when reimbursables come in, that we keep it timely. The federal government made grant cuts, so it's even more important that we pay reimbursements timely until, the federal government figures out what they're going to do. But in the meantime, all these people need the reimbursables. Now, I do want to ask, because I've heard several times about, using predictive modeling AI to find what we could pay in federal matching grants, but in calling the Comptroller's office, they said they've already maximized it using human beings. So I would just like more details on that if that's possible. Thank you.
Next question. What experience do you have with collective bargaining, and how would you work collaboratively with the unionized workforce? Beginning with candidate Kifelit.
Thank you very much. Although not my husband anymore, the father of my kids was an IFT member and was very involved with his union and with collective bargaining. Certainly, collective bargaining is the key. As representative, I have supported collective bargaining rights. I believe in the right to unionize. My first job was at Jewel Osco. My son worked at the Jewel side, and my daughter worked on the Osco side. My son's now in the Navy, and my daughter's married to a firefighter. And so we are a union household. My stepdad was at IBEW 117. And some of you might not be familiar with a 1986 Ford Escort, but that was my first car, and I've been driving Fords ever since. Collective bargaining is the respect you give to the employees that give so much of their life. That is the essence of collective bargaining. Collective bargaining means that we need to make sure of the employees and how they pretty much feed their families. And so I believe in the rights collective bargaining. In fact, I filed legislation to allow our legislative assistants to unionize and collectively bargain. The former Speaker of the House did not allow that any time. And I also voted for the legislative bargaining unit to allow them to bargain. So what I bring to the table is integrity, accountability, my background in government finance of 20-some years, working with AFSCME as a City of Aurora official, and now working with our unions as a 12-year state representative. I bring the most experience in that realm. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Candidate Croak.
Can you repeat the question?
What experience do you have with collective bargaining, and how would you work collaboratively with the unionized workforce?
Yeah, so when I was at DCEO, we had a mixed workforce. It was about a 200-person office, grew to about 300 people because we took it over after Ronner, so it was pretty decimated at the time. We had to rebuild it pretty significantly. It didn't even have a grants department when we took it over. And it was mixed. It had union, merit comp, and appointed. I didn't deal with collective bargaining since there wasn't a AFSCME contract that came up at that time, even though I did oversee a significant amount of personnel with HR. But we did do a lot of hiring. And the hiring through CMS for that workforce is very specific. And you have to really take that in consideration when you're talking about doing different things within an office, and I think that's important. Having an understanding of how those different types of employees all work together, and also having a recognition of the fact that union employees are like lifelong employees and have such an amazing knowledge of that office and are really dedicated to the office that they work for, and being willing to be collaborative and understanding that when you're walking in as a new elected official that sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and that's okay. AI was mentioned really quickly. The scare tactic as it pertains to that, AI will not ever replace employees in that way. But we all know we have some level of human error. We sometimes use AI, I'm sure, to write an email. There are ways we can use technology very carefully and thoughtfully.
Thank you. Candidate Kim.
Sure. So I'm very pro-union. 10 years ago as a village trustee, I sounded the alarm about the turnaround agenda up in Mundelein, and I was the only board member to vote no on it. The union is welcome in my home. My husband was a member of the IFT as a math teacher, and unions are welcome in my office. In fact, just a few months ago, they unionized under AFSCME, and the backstory is that I had heard that there were some county effort at a time where they were talking about furlough days for anyone who wasn't union, and so I just put the bug in the right ear. And so I'm very happy that they can protect themselves, especially with a new county treasurer coming in the next cycle. The other thing is I'm pro-worker in that I take a lot of modern ideas for offices and implement it. We actually digitized work in such a way that my staff could work from home 2 days a week. That's unheard of in a tax office, especially in summer. They used to suffer, and they couldn't even go on vacation with their kids in the summer because those were all blackout dates. And so digitized work, they could work from home. We have summer hours. They could take half days here and there. And we're the only office of government in the entire country that allows them to hang up the phone if someone's being violent or threatening their lives. We created a policy, and I put it out for the county board because I knew somebody would contact them and say, they hung up on me. But they should know the backstory. I'm a very pro-worker manager and office runner.
Thank you. Candidate Villa.
I will start with addressing the false statements about the digital ad tax. I want you all to know I am not a lazy legislator. I do not just put information out about revenue that isn't going to be passable. The language about the digital ad tax was passed through the Illinois Department of Revenue, the Commission on Government Forecasting and Accountability, and the Illinois Revenue Alliance. The fact that it was taken out based on false lies that it was going to not be able to stand up in court, that was bill language from another state. We took that bill language and fixed it and put that in the revenue package. Now to the question. I was an IEA member. I don't cross picket lines. I was a school social worker. I listen, I stand with the people, and I will be there to oversee the collective bargaining. I was a school board member as well. so I have a lot of experience with collective bargaining. And let's just put it this way, I'm not going to cross the picket line, so I'm going to make sure that the people who are working in the office of the Comptroller won't ever be picketing. Thank you.
Thank you. As a disperser of state funds, how would you approach prioritizing payments, such as employee payroll, bond obligations, and outside contracts, when resources are limited? Beginning with candidate Croak.
So I mentioned this. I think healthcare is probably, and obviously it's hard to make these determinations unless you see the full landscape in front of you, because there are so many priorities. And like in some ways you have to ask yourself, like, who am I to be the one who makes that type of decision? I will say, like, one of the best things about being a member of the General Assembly is I'm one of 117 people that I work with on a daily basis, and I've been able to see through this campaign what their priorities are. And I'm a big team player and a big collaborator. And I think that's very important in this role, too, that you don't operate by yourself. And I think as we talk about the disbursement of funds, I want my office to be an office where people can come to me and tell me about what is impacting their communities, what nonprofit is serving their area and they need those funds immediately. And I think that's just really important because, you know, I don't know everything. I'm not going to ever admit to that. But I will say, I think personally, healthcare is going to be one of those things that's very universal. And as I've been traveling the state, healthcare does seem to be something that really resonates with people. Obviously, we want to make sure that our employees are paid, and that's something that's hopefully going to be somewhat automatic in many ways. But I think that the collaboration to make sure that we are making the right decisions is going to be very important.
Thank you. Candidate Kim.
Thank you. So I would definitely, of the list that you said, prioritize not only employee payroll, but social services. As someone who is on those services, I know how much of a lifeline they are. And truly, I believe that government was created to serve the people. That's why it is public funds. It is kind of the glue that binds everything together. So I would never want to jeopardize our social services and the stuff that people need, like their paychecks and their health. And like the senior care, all those services. But I also would then move to the back of the line anything that doesn't incur a late fee. Because what we observed during the Rauner time was that there was $1 billion in late fees, which is $1 billion just with poured gasoline lit on fire, and that makes no sense whatsoever. That's not fiscally responsible. And so if we came to those dire straits, I would definitely seek out the ones who do not have late penalty and move them to the back. I am a fiscally prudent person, and I will make sure to be responsible with every single tax dollar.
Thank you. Candidate Villa.
So I'm going to go back. The budget is already being passed on the backs of working people. We will prioritize paying the bills in the order of the most vulnerable first. And I will go across the state and I will be talking to people about how the amount of revenue is not enough to meet the needs of the social service agencies, of the nonprofits, of the schools, of our people. There are people working full-time who need food stamps. There are people working 2 full-time jobs who can't pay their bills. And we're cutting services. Early child care, after-school care. The federal government, there are attacks that are coming down the road with health care. We are in an emergency situation. Paying bills early doesn't make sense right now. Yes, pay bills on time. But bragging about paying bills early, it doesn't make sense. We need to pay them on time. Any penny that we can save, we need to save. Because we are in the middle of a tsunami. This isn't just a rainy day. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Kifowit.
Thank you, and thank you for this question. I will answer this question in a factual matter, not like the other people at this table, because here's the fact. The state of Illinois has 700 different funds. Of these 700 different funds, they get categorized into 8 different categories. One of them is the General Revenue Fund, which is $55 billion, of which my colleagues here have been talking about. The question referred to bond payments. Those come out of the Bond and Interest Fund, not the General Revenue Fund. Those come off the top. The way that the state of Illinois manages not the $55 billion budget that everybody at this table has been talking about, but the $124 billion all funds budget is through those different categories. And there are categories that are mandated to get paid. So to answer your question properly, the bond payments get paid automatically. The payroll gets paid automatically. What then comes down from what is paid and what our mandated payments are is the General Revenue Fund, which is the $55 billion that we're talking about today. The rest of the table is. To be fair, and to be honest, we have what's called a Prompt Payment Act. So it's just simply not true to say, I'm going to take bills that don't incur a penalty and put it to the back. It's state law. You would know state law if you're a legislator in the state of Illinois. So what I will do is manage all the $124 billion properly, efficiently, and with the knowledge needed for this office. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our last question before we go to closing remarks. Illinois' Budget Stabilization Fund, more commonly referred to as our Rainy Day Fund, was created by the Illinois General Assembly in 2000 to be the state's primary reserve account. Its purpose is to keep our government operating through times when revenues decline due to unforeseen economic challenges, such as a recession or the recent coronavirus pandemic. How do you define a rainy day and the point at which you would consider utilizing the reserve funds? And how would you ensure that it is well funded? Beginning with candidate Kim.
Sure. So as someone who is a county treasurer and works with reserves currently, I'm very cautious to not dip into it quickly. What would be considered as an emergency, like let's take COVID for example. During COVID, there was a budget that was already passed, right, for lots of operational things. And when it came to emergency-related items, there were federal grants that came from the federal government. So did they eventually dip into the rainy day funds here? The answer is no. And so it would have to be really specific, really qualified, not something that's operational, because that's never a reason to break into any of our emergency funds, even us personally, right? It would have to be a one-off, not something that's cyclically going to happen. And I think, honestly, dipping into it too often is exactly why it's in the place that it's in. So I have admired the fact that not only has everyone been very prudent in putting money into the rainy day fund, but the current controller has put in some extra payments as well, because extra payments have helped accrue the interest faster. I mean, that's how compound interest works. So I would definitely not be in favor of dipping into it very often, but it is a case by case. I do admit it's a case by case.
Thank you. Candidate Villa.
Like I said earlier, we're in a tsunami. Dipping into the rainy day fund should not be done lightly. However, when we think about healthcare, let's think about how many people are about to be off of healthcare. So 15-hour wait list is in the emergency room. Should it be when it's 48 hours? Should it be when the wait list is 72 hours? Food pantries. Should it be when the shelves are empty for a week, or should we wait for the shelves to be empty 2 weeks? I don't do things by myself. I don't do things alone. I work as a we. I was a school social worker for 15 years. I don't make decisions alone. I would bring partners together from the most vulnerable zip codes, and I would help them make the decisions of when it's time to touch that rainy day fund. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Kifowit.
Thank you very much. Being on the budget working groups and being on a significant budget committees, multiple budget committees throughout my tenure, the history and during the Ronner years, the rainy day fund was at $60,000, and now it's at $2 billion. Now, again, we have a $124 billion all funds budget. So the rainy day fund can help us for a week, maybe 2 weeks. So it's just not where we need it to be. It's just not in a position to be rated. And to be quite honest, the Comptroller did deposit money into the rainy day fund. It's the General Assembly that passes the budget that puts the money into the rainy day fund. So the General Assembly would have to sit and make the decision with regards to revenues. And I agree with my colleagues. In cases of emergencies, we have to raise revenues. And we had a catastrophe. Through the Ronner years that I was a part of, the income tax went from 5% down to 3.75%. And we got up to $17 billion in unpaid bills. And what did we do? I took the vote. I'm the only person on this table that had the courage to take the vote to raise the income tax, to save Chicago State University, to save our domestic violence shelters, to pay our bills. And then when Susana Mendoza came in, she worked with my committee, and we took out loans, we took out the bonds to pay down that $17 billion worth of bills with federal matching dollars that we already identify to make sure that we got down, and now we are at 10 credit upgrades. And we are in the A range because of the fiscal responsibility that I have been a part of for over a decade. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Candidate Croak.
Thank you. I think the concern about dipping into the rainy day fund is that there could be an impact on our credit rating. And as mentioned, there's been a lot of work to increase that credit rating. And if we are to go back to a place where the credit rating agencies are concerned about Illinois' financial health, that could impact us in ways that are more detrimental. Whether that's our ability to borrow money, what our interest is. And I think that's something that we have to think about long term. So if there is a crisis and it would result in the General Assembly thinking about whether or not we have to tap into the rainy day fund, it would have to be something incredibly serious, and it would have to be something that is, I think, a one-time use, as many of the candidates up here have said. I will say, as it pertains to continuing investment in the rainy day fund, I would love for the General Assembly to figure out whether there is an automated way for us to continue those contributions, where it's not always a continued fight about how much we want to put into the rainy day fund, that there is a specific revenue source or an interest that goes directly into the rainy day fund.
Thank you. We will now end with 90-second closing remarks for each candidate. We will go in reverse order, beginning with candidate Kifowit.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to address today. As I said, I'm the only person at this table with over 20 years of government finance experience. Over 10 years on the local level with the City of Aurora, over 10 years on the state level as a representative. One of the things that wasn't touched upon, and I want to bring it to the individual's attention, is that the Comptroller's office sits on the State Board of Investments for the pension systems. I was a registered financial advisor with a firm called Morgan Stanley Dean Witter. I am the only person at this table with financial experience in that regards as well. And I will say on day one, I will never support crypto for our pension systems because our retirees require stable, sound financial choices for their pensions. So I appreciate the opportunity to sit and talk today, and I will stick around and talk to anybody who has any additional questions. I have 20 plus years of experience in government finance. I have a master's in public administration in government finance. I have been on the budget working groups to pull us out of the Ronner years, currently on the budget working group today. I have worked with every single controller, Judy Bartopinka, unfortunately Leslie Munger, and the current controller with regards to the job of the controller's office. The controller's office manages 16 million transactions a year. That is not a treasurer on the county level, my friends. This is an important business. It's the chief financial officer, and we deserve somebody who is experienced, knowledgeable, and can do the job on day one, not learn as they go. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and I appreciate you for having me today. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Villa.
Today you have heard me speak about people with disabilities, seniors, housing, food insecurity. You've heard me talk about mental health and hospitals, emergency rooms. I have a master's degree in social work. I work for the people. They are my North Star. I am not bought or paid by special interest groups or by lobbyists. I am not a crypto investor. I am a bold leader who has held their vote to make sure that communities with safety net hospitals don't have to worry about those hospitals closing down. I am a bold person who raced after ICE and got them the hell out of my city. I stand with the people every single time. This isn't about me. This is about we. This is what the Democratic Party needs. Bold leaders who aren't afraid to face adversity, who aren't afraid to think about bold solutions, who aren't afraid to say that we need revenue from corporations and billionaires. That is me. I will be your champion in this seat. I will bring this seat the honor and dignity of the people of Illinois. Thank you so much for this evening.
Thank you. Candidate Kim.
Again, thank you everyone for hosting us today and Rainbow Push. To make clear, I do sit on the government funds investment pool for billions of dollars. So Illinois is a big state with all sorts of different kinds of people. And of all the candidates up here, I know what it's like to sign up for Medicaid or be a paycheck away from nothing. When there's difficulty, you can trust that I'll run towards the fire. And as a young mom that used Medicaid, WIC, Head Start, and I qualified for the EITC, I'm also a woman who has had an abortion and used IVF, and my eldest kid is trans. Everything I am today and where my family is, I couldn't have done without the supports that all your organizations provide and have fought for. And what I bring to the Comptroller's office is not just my professional experience, but my lived experience. No one wants polished bullet points and limousine liberals anymore. They want real, genuine people who know what it's like. This historic location, hallowed for organizing, progress, and civil rights, and that's not lost on me. Rainbow Push is about uniting communities. And the difference between me and the other candidates up here on the stage is that everyone has a home in Team HK. My name is Holly Kim, and I ask for your vote. And it would be the honor of my life to serve as your next Illinois Comptroller. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you. Candidate Croak.
So I got my start, I mentioned, in government because I was working at Cook County. I was 22 years old, and I was answering phones, and they were calling about property taxes. And property taxes, people get really worked up, right? No one likes their property tax bill. So you usually you answer a phone, and someone's yelling at you. And you have to try to figure out how to diffuse the situation and solve the problem. And it was very quick. I quickly learned in government that something that was so easy for me to figure out because I had the information, because I was working in government, was very difficult for the normal person. And I started getting really addicted to this idea of just helping people, of trying to navigate the bureaucracy of government. And it is something that I have been chasing in every single role I have held in public service. It is the reason that I have run for office, is that I just want government to work for people. And I know that's not as exciting as some of the other things, but I think that government has kind of lost its way. And the Comptroller's office has the ability to be better and truly serve every single person in the state of Illinois and to make their lives a little bit better. I am fighting to make sure my kids stay in the state. I am fighting to make sure that they are here and they have a family and they have a good job and they take care of me when they are older. I am fighting because I love the state of Illinois so much. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Can we get a round of applause for all our candidates this evening? Our democracy works best when voters are educated and empowered, and each of you here today, every candidate, every audience member tuning in live or at home on the live stream, helped move us in the direction to make our democracy stronger. A huge thank you to every co-hosting organization who helped get the word out about this event, and a special thank you to the League of Women Voters of Chicago for being our timekeepers today. Another round of applause. Please, this is the last of 6 forums. We had a forum for U.S. Senate and 4 for different congressional seats. We're rounding out the series today. I want to give a huge shout out to Julia and the rest of the team at Citizen Action for all their work to put together these events. So, shout out, Julia. Please follow us. You can scan the QR code to stay tuned for additional events and updates. Thank you all, and have a great rest of your evening.